So Professor Marandi, who has been quite a few times on the show, he's a great friend. He's, as you know, he's a professor at the University of Tehran, but he's also right now accompanying the Iran delegation at the nuclear talks in Vienna, right? He's an advisor to the delegation. And he was invited on BBC Hard Talk. For those of you who watch, who know the BBC's programs, Hard Talk is one of those, it's been around for decades. It's really one of their more famous programs. And it's not Marandi's first time on Hard Talk, but this was a very interesting exchange. And I wanted to comment on a few of the bits from this interview. If you want to watch the full thing, it's about 25 minutes. I can put a link below, but let's take a look at the exchange.
But in essence, what you're saying is you do not have one shred of faith or trust in what the Americans are bringing to the table. And I think it's also true to point out that you, on the Iranian side, refuse to talk face-to-face with the Americans anyway. It all has to be done through third parties.
Well, first of all, the Iranians negotiated extensively with the United States. And then we had the JCPOA, the nuclear deal. And what happened? The Americans violated the deal under Obama. Under Trump, they tore up the deal. Under Biden, they continued to implement Trump's policies. So if the Americans want to talk to the Iranians, first the Americans have to go and implement what they agreed to do when they negotiated with the Iranians previously.
I mean, what am I supposed to say? Like this question by the presenter is so ridiculous. He's basically saying that, well, Iran is being they're not being cooperative because they don't want to meet face to face with the Americans to negotiate like they did in 2015, right? Because in 2015, that's when they hashed out the deal. There was face to face meetings all the time. But right now, Iran basically, they're having indirect negotiations. So, yeah, but that doesn't make Iran uncooperative. Otherwise, Iran wouldn't be here. They wouldn't be in Vienna. But do you see how they try to frame it as Iran is the one that's like not complying and being annoying and won't cooperate and won't sit down and be reasonable? Dude, the United States left the deal, not Iran. Like, can you please put that into context? Like, they act like Iran quit the deal. They act like Iran is the one that's not following the deal. The U.S. left the deal. This is a fact. And as Marandi points out, even when they did sign the deal, they didn't actually fully implement it, which is a whole other story under the Obama administration. But this is a fact. The United States left the deal. So how can you come along and say Iran is not being cooperative? Iran doesn't really have to sit down face-to-face with the Americans because the parties to the agreement, to the JCPOA, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, as it's called, Iran nuclear deal, it's the same thing. It's who's still in it? Iran, Russia, China, the UK, France, Germany, and the EU. So they meet together. There's no problem there. And then you'll see Iran meeting on the side with China and Russia and so on. But they're not under any obligation to meet with the Americans, especially when the Americans pulled out. But again, it's just one of these like classic, nonsense smears. Like, you're not really going to get anywhere if you don't sit down face to face. You seem really uncooperative.
You call it leverage. Many people watching and listening to this might call it a threat. What you seem to be saying is we're going to enrich uranium, develop our capacity to 60%, and who knows, maybe beyond it to the 95% you need to develop a nuclear weapon, simply as a threat to hang over the United States and its allies, to tell them that if they don't do what we want in Tehran, we will pursue a nuclear weapon. Is that what you mean by leverage?
Stephen, you know as well as I that if Iran wanted to pursue a nuclear weapon, Iran would have had it many years ago. The only countries that have gone beyond threatening are Western countries. They've tried to crush Iranian society through sanctions, just like what they're doing in Afghanistan, just like what they're doing in a host of other countries. They're trying to crush women and children through sanctions. So these are not threats. These are actions by Western regimes that try to gain leverage through the suffering of ordinary people.
Again, so basically, Iran, I can't believe I have to explain this again, but I'm going to keep explaining it. In the nuclear deal, it says in the nuclear deal, it's written down very clearly under Article 26 and 36. If the United States doesn't comply with the agreement, and it puts sanctions back on Iran, Iran is going to treat that as grounds to not fulfill its own commitments, right? So when the US left the deal, under the agreement, Iran has the right not to hold up its end of the deal. Okay? It's like a basic contract. If you sign a contract with someone and that person rips up the contract, why do you have to follow the contract? The contract is gone. In this case, Iran, for a whole year after Trump quit the deal, was still following it to the T. Okay? And even now, the patience is frankly unbelievable. I don't know how they do it. But he's saying, like, why are you enriching uranium to 60%? Because the limit in the deal is 3.67%, right? That's what's regarded as adequate for civilian use, right? So nuclear energy and other purposes that are strictly civilian. But Iran has gone past that. They went to 20%. Then they went to 60%. And this is all a result of U.S. aggression. They killed General Soleimani. Then Israel assassinated an Iranian nuclear scientist. So it's tit for tat. Iran didn't go and just enrich uranium to 20% for no reason. It didn't just go and add more centrifuges and cascades. It did that as a response to Israel sabotaging its nuclear program, Israel killing a nuclear scientist, the U.S. and Israel murdering General Soleimani. So it's, if you're looking for someone to blame, logically, you should look at who's causing Iran to do that, right? But that doesn't mean Iran's building a bomb. I hate this crap so much. It's so, I mean, this is painful to listen to for me. I can't imagine how painful this is for someone who's actually a nuclear scientist. Just because you have 90% enriched uranium, that doesn't mean you can just build a bomb. You need a certain amount of kilograms for a bomb to build one bomb. Then you have to put that, you need a delivery method, a payload. You need to figure out how you can deliver the payload. You need to do all sorts of testing. I mean, I spoke to Scott Ritter on the channel here. Go watch the interview if you want. He was in the Marines, and he was the UN nuclear inspector in Iraq, right? So Iraq had to dismantle its nuclear weapons program and its biological program, all of this stuff. And he's the one who went in there and made sure that everything was going fine and they were actually cooperating. So he knows the stuff. He's the chief inspector. And he was one of the people warning before the invasion in 2003 that Iraq doesn't have WMDs. How does he know that? Because he's the one who's supposed to verify it. So he explained right here on the channel that if Iran was actually developing a bomb, everyone would know about it. You can measure these things. It's very easy to tell now. You can't hide that. And you have to remember that Iran has IAEA inspectors crawling, going wherever they like. Now, of course, that's changed in the last few months a tiny bit because of the additional protocol being suspended as a result of Fakhrizadeh being assassinated, right? The Iranian nuclear scientist, the Iranian parliament, the Majlis, they decided to suspend the additional protocol. But they've still kept a black box agreement. So if everything goes well, Iran will hand over the recordings of the facilities, and then they can check and do what they've been doing before. My point is, though, Iran is not building a bomb. This is ridiculous. It's just not doing that. And not to mention that they have a fatwa against it, right? So they have a religious decree against building a bomb. It's the Iran's supreme leader issued a fatwa against nuclear weapons. So just from a religious point of view, they cannot build a bomb. Do you understand? Second of all, look at what Marandi is saying, because it's very important. Like, it's not okay for Iran to enrich uranium because that's a big threat, but it's okay for the US and its allies to starve Iran. Like, that actually kills people. We're in a pandemic. What do you think that did to Iran during a pandemic? It hurt Iran a lot. Now, Iran ended up making its own vaccine. It ended up taking lots of measures to, manufacture PPE. Iran is capable, but that doesn't mean that it's okay. It likes having, suffering inflicted on it. Sanctions kill people. It's a fact. It's siege warfare. And so it's okay for the US to kill people with sanctions, but it's not okay for Iran to do what it's allowed to do in the fucking deal and to just use that as leverage. It's not going to build a bomb anyway. It's so disgusting. It's so disgusting. And the thing is, the average person watching this has no fucking clue what's in the JCPOA. They don't know that Iran is actually allowed to do this stuff. They don't know that reaching 90 or 95% enriched uranium is not enough to build a bomb. You need to do so much more work that, I'm mad. Let's continue.
And we know the Israelis are watching this very closely, and their Prime Minister, Naftali Bennett, has reserved the right, quite explicitly, to not be bound by anything that comes out of the talks, this long-dreaded conflict in 2022 over your nuclear program, couldn't there?
Well, we know about Western conflicts and how they destroy country after country, but Iran is not Iraq. Iran is not even Vietnam. Iran and its allies in this region are far more powerful than anything the Americans have confronted before. The Israeli regime is too puny and small to do anything significant to Iran. And if it attacks Iran, the retaliation will be something disproportionate and crushing. So I don't think the Israelis would be that foolish.
When you talk of bringing down a rain of violence on U.S. targets across the Middle East, and of course we know your relationship with Hezbollah, with militias in Iraq, and of course with the Houthis in Yemen, you're going to make it impossible for Biden to do a deal with Iran.
Stephen, you are the one who is talking about war and violence, and the Israelis not waiting for anyone. The Iranians are not going to initiate any conflict. The Iranians have been... Your government supported Saddam Hussein. Your government gave Saddam Hussein chemical weapons to use, your governments, Western governments, to use against our country. I survived 2 chemical attacks. Many of my friends didn't. Iran never retaliated with chemical weapons. That's the difference between us and your governments.
That was ridiculous. Did you see that? The presenter, the BBC presenter, is like, well, Israel has said that they're going to hit you. They're going to take military action against you no matter what happens in the negotiations. They don't care about the deal. They might hit you. And then Marandi says, yeah, well, we're going to defend ourselves. If Israel hits us, then we're going to unleash something like they don't even want to know. And then the host is like, are you threatening violence? What? Israel is threatening violence. You literally just said that. You literally just said that Israel is threatening to hit Iran no matter what happens in the negotiations, even if there's a deal again and everything's fine. But Iran is the violent one. Iran didn't do anything. He's saying Iran is going to defend itself if Israel hits it. Jesus Christ, I can't handle this stupidity. It's so dishonest. They're so dishonest. I can't believe that. Really, I can't believe that. Here's another one.
The world looks at what Iran is doing in terms of its political prisoners and in particular its treatment of foreign nationals inside your country. It doesn't see a Tehran government which appears to want to improve its human rights record.
Please, let's not talk about human rights. Otherwise, we'll have to talk about Assange and solitary confinement and many other people. Let's not talk about human rights when your government, the Western governments in the United States are imposing maximum pressure on ordinary women and children, killing people.
It's true. It's true, man. Look, everything they say that Syria does, North Korea does, Iran does, all the classic bad guy totalitarian, they do it themselves. They do it themselves. You have political prisoners in the West. You have journalists that are persecuted in the West. I know I'm covering one of the cases. It's plain as day. Anyone can see this. So they want to come here and take the moral high ground and be like, yeah, but you're don't you know about your human rights abuses? It's like they're robots. Every single one of them, they always default to this because they don't really have anything to say. But what about your human rights abuses? Jesus Christ, man. I'm just going to remind people again, the United States, I know this is the BBC, but again, the deal it's the tension here is between the US and Iran. The United States has the biggest prison population on earth. It's 2 million people incarcerated. It's an industry. They make money off of putting people in jail. I mean, that is the pinnacle of barbarism. And you want to come here and talk about human rights? Where are the human rights for African Americans? Where are the human rights for the natives? Where are the human rights for all the people that are killed by these U.S. wars? I can't count how many wars are going on. There are wars we probably don't even know about. We'll find out in 20 years when they release some CIA files. Jesus Christ. You want to come and talk about human rights? What does that have to do with the nuclear deal? The U.S. needs to abide by the fucking deal that it signed in 2015. It's nothing to do with Iran's human rights. or whatever else they want to talk about, the color of Iran's flag or whatever nonsense they want to bring up. There's a deal. You signed the fucking deal, and now you pulled out and you broke it. You are the one who needs to come back. This is so basic. This is so stupid and childish that this is like, they have to make such a huge issue out of it on the news and act like, oh, well, you know, Iran is enriching uranium. No, what does that have to do with it? That it's allowed to do that under Article 26 and 36. Do you even read the fucking deal? Man, I really get annoyed by this because this is such a big issue, the nuclear deal, and it's one of the most dishonest ones. Like, I really mean that. Dude, I cover politics for a living. I see every day how the news, the corporate media, they talk about certain subjects. And I'm telling you, this is one of the worst. This is one of the worst. They lie so much about this. It's painful. It's absolutely painful. So in any case, do go watch the full thing. If you can, it's on YouTube, but look at what happened actually. Something very interesting. So if you go on the BBC Hard Talk website, you won't see this episode. Look at this. Professor Marandi posted this. He said, I'm disappointed my BBC Hard Talk interview was to be broadcast 8 times, but the last 2 were removed. I can't find it on Hard Talk's main page under Home, Episodes, Clips, Podcast, and the Twitter account didn't promote it. As expected, BBC Persian ignored it. Now, just to update you, I do think that the Twitter posted a clip of it. The BBC Hard Talk posted a clip of it. But it's true. If you do go on Home, Episodes, Clips, you can't find it. I was kind of stunned, you know? And Marandi was telling me that because usually they'll show you how many times and when the episode will broadcast. It says it on every individual page of each episode. And it said 8 times originally, he told me. And then they only did it 6 times. They removed the last 2. And again, the weirdest of all is if you go there, it has its own link that works. You will find, I have the link. I can give it to you. You will go and see that the episode is on the website. But if you're someone who doesn't know about this episode and you're browsing the BBC Hard Talk page, you won't see it. That's weird. I think he gave them a good spanking, and so they're not really happy to broadcast that. They can't handle the truth. It's really funny watching them because they all operate so similarly. You know, when I see the presenters on BBC or CNN or Al Jazeera, again, you know, not every presenter is the same, but most of the time, usually, they always parrot the same things. You know, it's like, what about Iran's human rights abuses? Well, what about the uranium? It's like they just don't understand how the deal works. They don't understand that the U.S. left the deal. It's not a question of Iran being non-compliant. Just, it's so painful. It's horrible. So horrible, really. In any case, that was a good job by Professor Marandi. And right now, just to give you an update on the nuclear talks. So they've just concluded the 8th round, okay? Everyone's gone home to their capitals for consultations. And then they will reconvene this week. So this will be the last round. This round, right now, when they come back to Vienna, it's make or break. This is it. This is it. There's either going to be a deal, or there's going to be stalemate, or there's going to be escalation. And I'm going to do a nice little wrap-up interview with Professor Marandi about the talks. And I interviewed the lead negotiator, the chief negotiator for the Iran delegation. He's the top man. So go watch the interview. It's right here on the channel. You won't see it anywhere else. You won't see that anywhere else because they're not interested in too much truth-telling on the corporate media. They have a certain narrative to stick to, and that's it.